All right, we are recording, just for everyone's knowledge. We are recording and we are streaming live on Facebook. So thank you all so much for coming. Let's see if we have anyone else. All righty. So we will go ahead and get started now. Thank you all. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Natalie Cunningham, and I am the Outreach Director for the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, and I'll be your host today. With COVID-19 cases rising this holiday season and nearly 2,000 Kentucky lives lost to the virus, Kentuckians are struggling. Federal aid provided earlier this year helped families affected by the pandemic and economic downturn, but that help is running out. After months of thwarting movement on a robust aid package, this week, Senator McConnell proposed another relief bill that comes nowhere close to meeting the needs of struggling Kentucky families. As Federal Reserve Chairman Powell said, too little support will lead to a weak recovery, creating unnecessary hardship for households and businesses. We're here today to talk about exactly what is needed to provide the recovery this country and Kentuckians deserve, and to speak with our neighbors who have been personally affected by this crisis. Please join me in welcoming our speakers, Dustin Pugel, Senior Policy Analyst, and Dustin, if you all can wave when I say your name, that would be great. Dustin Pugel, Senior Policy Analyst at the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy. Adrian Bush, the Executive Director for the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky. And they will provide some context for us as we hear from some of our neighbors and fellow Kentuckians, Laura Holman, Catherine Gorby, Valerie Frost, Soda Millington, and Ada Avila. So thank you all so much again for being here. We will take questions in the chat during and after the call. And so without further ado, I will hand it on over to Dustin.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Again, my name is Dustin Pugel. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst with KY Policy. And I'm just going to sort of set the stage for the rest of our speakers here with kind of where the state of play is in Kentucky. You know, we're in the middle of an economic downturn like none we've seen in generations. 177,000 fewer Kentuckians are employed today compared to before the pandemic hit. And the recovery is slowing just at the same time that COVID cases are surging and as vital forms of aid have expired or will expire very soon. Supplemental unemployment benefits ended months ago. The extended benefits program for long-term unemployed Kentuckians was abruptly cut off, leaving nearly 5,000 Kentuckians without any income. The two remaining special unemployment programs for gig workers and those who need additional weeks are set to expire the day after Christmas, leaving 101,000 more Kentuckians with no income. The only round of stimulus checks has pretty much all been spent by now. CARES Act monies that support state and local governments have provided relief for rent and utilities will run out by the year's end. Federally funded paid leave expires by the end of the year, as does the moratorium on evictions. And over 500,000 Kentuckians who have been able to defer their student loans will have to start paying those again in January, just as the rest of this aid runs out. The federal aid we've received up to this point has really helped prop up our economy and our public revenue. But now with the federal tap being shut off, even while the pandemic is raging, we face a dire situation for workers, families, and our economy. Kentucky and the nation really need a robust federal relief package before the end of the month. And that package should include things like aid to state and local governments, a restoration of expanded unemployment benefits, and an extension of those benefits that will only expire once we've fully recovered. We need rental and food assistance and an extension of the evictions moratorium. We need small business support. We need funding to directly combat the COVID virus, as well as funding for the distribution and production of a vaccine. And we need a lot more than that. The proposal that Natalie mentioned earlier that Leader McConnell put forward falls far short of what we need and includes wrong-headed priorities like funding for a 3-martini lunch, a business deduction, but that doesn't have any food assistance for people who are struggling to have enough to eat. New census data shows that 36% of Kentucky adults are having difficulty paying usual household expenses. Many Kentuckians are facing extreme hardship right now, with hunger, housing insecurity, and joblessness at levels unseen in decades. And after 12 years of repeated cuts to our state budget, we're once again facing austerity at a time when the need for government services are at their height. Congress must act, and in particular, the Senate must get serious about agreeing to a bipartisan aid package that actually meets the challenges we face in this moment. If they don't, the recession will be much deeper, much longer, and much more painful. The consequences for inaction are dire, and the clock is ticking.
Thank you, Dustin. Adrian?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian Bush. I'm the Executive Director of the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky. As we move into the holiday season under the increasing threat of COVID-19, Kentuckians' hardships continue to grow. We need Senate Majority Leader McConnell to prioritize real assistance to his constituents, and that includes robust rent relief, an extension and expansion of the CDC's national eviction moratorium, and continued homeless assistance through the winter months. The latest data from the Census Bureau is bleak and lines up with what we are seeing happen to our neighbors and friends. Thanks to zero meaningful relief since the passage of the CARES Act at the end of March, Kentuckians are behind on rent. They continue to face the threat of eviction with the expiration of the moratorium on New Year's Eve, and small cities are struggling to put together the resources to safely shelter people experiencing homelessness. The Household Pulse study from the beginning of November indicates that 15% or 115,000 households are behind on rent in Kentucky. 20% of Black home renters are behind on rent. 7% of all renting households have no confidence in ability to make next month's rent. And 13% of Black home renters report the same. 32% of all home renters think it is somewhat to very likely they will have to leave their home due to eviction in the next 2 months. And according to the firm Stout, the estimated rent shortfall in Kentucky is between $236 million and $350 million. All of this while the state rental assistance program closed a month ago after obligating all $15 million in the Healthy at Home Eviction Relief Fund, leaving Kentuckians in 118 counties with no broad-based rent relief in sight. Not only do we need rent relief, we need legal protections. In the same study, the firm Stout estimated a conservative number of 120 evictions to be filed in January. The CDC eviction moratorium was a good start in allowing folks to stay in their homes and make good faith efforts to keep up with rent. But the Senate needs to take decisive and comprehensive action to implement a universal moratorium with no loopholes. Court-ordered evictions and forcible detainers are still happening due to other lease violations, usually used as a pretext for evicting, when the real reason is the family's inability to pay due to COVID-19 economic hardship. We need a down payment on assistance now. The ball is in the Senate's court, and it is the majority leader's obligation to act now with real assistance that helps real people here in Kentucky. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. And now we would love to hear from some of our friends and neighbors and local Kentuckians who've been struggling in this crisis. Laura, are you with us? Are you I believe you're our 502 number. You would be currently muted. Unmuting you. Laura, can you hear us? Not sure.
Hello.
Oh, yay! Thank you. Hello. Thank you for being with us, Laura. Could you tell me exactly how to spell your name so that we can have that?
It's Laura, and it's Holman, Holman.
Thank you so much. for being with us, Laura. And I know that you are at work right now, so we want to be as swift as possible. Could you tell us a little bit about your story, how things have been for you during the pandemic, and what kinds of struggles with unemployment you've been dealing with, or any other struggles you've been dealing with?
Well, I've been pretty fortunate. I had a part-time job I was able to fall back on for a little bit. But I did file my unemployment. It took me 5 weeks to get it for my full-time job. What I'm aware of is I never even got the back pay for that 5 weeks. I was still short, you know. It did put me a little bit behind on bills, which I'm still working on currently catching up. The rent was my main priority, and I did pay that up for the most part. Prior to moving out of my townhouse, but during moving out of the townhouse, they were also trying to evict me.
Mm-hmm. They were trying to evict you as you were moving out?
Like I had told, they were trying to start an eviction prior to me like moving out. I had called them and left them a voicemail, and I had sent them a text and told them that I would be out by the end of October. We went to court, I believe it was the end of October or the beginning of November. I had to go to court, which was pushed back, and then I had to go to court the second time. So I did show up the second time, and they were going to push it back again. So I had not only missed a day of work to be in court, but the judge did lift everything. She dismissed it because I had explained to her I had already moved out and that they were still trying to file an eviction against me. And I had been gone for like a month.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, this hardship is not just hard on me, it's hard on everybody. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I understand people, you know, people who are providing homes and stuff to be rented or needing their income as well. I understand that. But, you know, people who are not as fortunate as I am, who have been out of work and didn't have a second income to fall back on, who didn't prepare for something such as this, you know, to even help a little bit. You know, I mean, people do need help, and they need help bad, because I have come across several different people who have been in bad situations with their rent and they can't pay.
Well, and it sounds like you're, you know, lucky to be back at work again in the middle of all of this. And I hope that you're able to take care of your health while you're going back to work. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we move on to our next speaker?
No, I don't believe so. I just hope that this, you know, people get the help that they need.
Well, and thank you so much for being with us and sharing your story, especially considering that you are back at work and taking your break to come do this for us. So thank you so much for being with us, Laura.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Laura. All right. Bye, Laura. Valerie, are you with us? Valerie Frost. I know that you have some sleeping children, so we'd like to allow you to speak while they're still giving you some space.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Valerie Frost. I am a single mother of 3-year-old twins, and I live in Madison County. And being the sole provider in my household, we did already fall under the federal poverty line prior to COVID. So I was already a SNAP recipient. And the SNAP program for us, as I'm sure many other families, we have unique circumstances here that make this program the most beneficial to us as far as food benefits go. My twins were both premature. They were born at 28 weeks. And my son is autistic. He is a severe picky eater. He was on a feeding tube last year. And he's very rigid with what he will eat. they say, well, they'll eat when they're hungry. That's a thing that people say, and that doesn't apply here. My son will only eat his preferred foods. So I have to get the foods that he will eat, and it's an ongoing challenge. He's in feeding therapy. And then my daughter, on the other hand, she has 9 food allergies, not including a milk protein allergy. And a lot of them are common ingredients like apples and corn, which is all corn syrup and all that's in all the kids' snacks. So I have to go to 3 different stores to read all the ingredients and find replacements to give her, common foods that kids eat, like graham crackers, all the general meals, cereal. She also has oat allergy. So I have to replace all her cereal. And then with the replacements for her allergies, a lot of times it ends up being a gluten-free food or organic. So it's more expensive. And I'm just not able to cut our food budget. And I know that people will say, well, there's lots of help out there. There's food banks, the school meals they're giving out now. And, while they're very generous, like, unfortunately, they don't provide the foods that my kids need. They don't meet our dietary restrictions, quite often. So they'll give out apple juice. My daughter's allergic to apples, or she's allergic to beef too, meat. We can't get the milk. So SNAP is the only program that offers the flexibility for us to make choices, whereas most everything else is a standard issue meal or meal package. And I appreciate it, but then we can't use it. So with COVID, we have been okay so far. They did increase to maximum benefits for SNAP the last few months, which has been helpful, but we still do run out. Today's the 3rd. I don't have any money on my food stamp card right now, and it renews on the 9th. So any food that I buy between now and the 9th, I have to pay for out of pocket. And even though that we've been okay, I have had reduced hours. I do work, and I have hourly pay. I've had reduced hours because we've shut down a couple of times due to COVID. I work for a preschool, and so when we have contact trace, exposure, enough absences, we do have to shut down. And so we have had days, that we weren't there, and I don't get paid. I don't get vacation pay or sick hours. And so we've been okay. But even recently this week, the school's going to shut down for the whole rest of the month. And it's Christmas coming up. I have 2 small children. So our budget was already tight, and the COVID numbers are rising really fast. It doesn't seem like this is going anywhere. It doesn't seem like it's getting any better. So it does place extra stress, and just to know that people want to not provide enough help or, end some of these assistance that's scary, because, I personally don't know next month what my finances are going to look like, or even this month. I mean, I'm just skating by here. So I think what I want from my story to stress the most is that, and I like how Adrian said this, I'm a real person. I'm a real recipient of SNAP benefits. And I know there's so many misconceptions about people that receive social services. I work, I pay taxes, I contribute to the economy. I'm not just sitting here asking for handouts or to be lazy, or, I know that not everyone believes that, but, hear things floating around. And I really just think, with Congress considering these increases, I want them to consider individual circumstances. I'm happy that I came here and I get to be able to share my story, because I am an individual and I'm just trying to feed my family. That's it. So thank you all for letting me speak.
Valerie, thank you so much. I think that you've said everything you need to say. I think your specific situation is just such a great example of everyone's different situations, right? And your needs are so very specific, but everyone has all of these very different needs. And I just really appreciate you for coming out here today and sharing them with us. So thank you, Valerie. All righty. Well, and Valerie, your name, please, just in case we do have any reporters that are reaching out and asking for that. It is spelled, could you spell your name for us just to make sure we're correct?
Yes, it's Valerie. Frost, F-R-O-S-T.
Thank you so much, Valerie. And I just appreciate your time. I hope that your lovely twins are still asleep and that you get at least another moment of silence before your chaos ensues. Okay, thank you, Valerie. Next up, if you are still with us, Catherine. Let's see, Catherine, there you are. Would you be able to share with us now?
Sure. My name's Catherine. I'm a single mother of 2 children. One lives with her father, but I have the other one with me. I'm actually experiencing homelessness at the moment. I bounce in between some family and friends. I lost my home in the beginning of the COVID. I could no longer afford my rent, and it took a while to get my unemployment all figured out. So then, I had to pay for people to let me live with them. And then they just shut us down again. So I'm laid off again. I'm a waitress, by the way. So it's a really big struggle right now. I'm trying to get an income-based apartment somewhere, but there's a waiting list like crazy high, and anywhere else I can't afford the rent. So it's a big of a struggle through all this, but we're making dues though. Not sure really what else to say, really.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. So you said that you were able to apply for unemployment at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, it took a while to get it because for
Right.
some reason a lot of our cases got messed up on, and we couldn't get a hold of anybody to have them fix it. So it took a while before we could get through to anybody on email.
Right. And it's, your bills don't stop during that time.
Well, no, and I was also denied the lost wages assistance because I accidentally was answering a question wrong on my unemployment and wasn't aware of it. And the appeal, I don't know what's happening with it. I haven't heard anything on it. So, yeah, and then they just, like, the end of my unemployment came, and I thought that it would automatically like reapply for it, but it didn't. So these past few weeks, I didn't get a check either. I had to file a new claim. So.
Well, and Soda, I know that you have a similar situation as far as, so I was wondering if you would like to speak, and then we can kind of go back and forth, because I know that both Soda and Catherine, you all are dealing with unemployment and housing insecurity and all of those things. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Sure.
Soda, if you want to introduce yourself and start out, you can, and then we'll kind of go back and forth a little, if that's okay.
Hi, I'm Soda, and I live in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and luckily I've lived in the same house for a pretty long time, and my landlords have been tolerant of not being always on time with the rent, but really it's just been a crapshoot trying to deal with unemployment and all of the other assistance places. With unemployment specifically, I had applied when we first went into lockdown back in March, and then I didn't hear anything back, and something within the dashboard told me that I needed to refile my claim, and so I did that, and then it eliminated the like 6 weeks between that time period, and it did start turning on my unemployment, but it completely left me without those other weeks previously claimed because I'd filed a new claim. Once I found the Facebook groups that talked about, like, everybody was trying to help each other out with unemployment, most of the people in there were like, don't refile your claim, don't do it, it's gonna make things more complicated. I'm like, well, crap, I wish I would have known that before I had refiled, like it had told me to. And I'm still haven't gotten in contact with anybody, whether I've emailed or called, and I just get that lovely phone call from that 1-800 number that says, we're sorry that you haven't been able to get through to us. And it's 6 months or so later now, 8 months. And it's just, the whole system is just really set up so poorly, and it's been mismanaged. And I like, for as advanced of a country that we are, I just can't believe that we had left ourselves at such a disadvantage with using such outdated, poorly functioning systems.
Catherine, I see you shaking your head when she was talking about
No, I totally agree.
misinformation.
I mean, I've been on the waiting list for unemployment to contact me back for about a month and a half, almost 2 months now. And yeah, you get a call about 7, 8 o'clock at night stating it's the unemployment office, but there's nobody there to speak to you. And like in the beginning of the COVID, when I was able to get a hold of somebody through email to help fix my claim, they shut the emails down. So now there's no way whatsoever. And I don't have an actual unemployment office here in Corbin. So that makes it even harder.
So, Soda, would you like to add anything else to your, would you like to add anything? Or Valerie, would you all like to add anything about, just the struggle that you've been dealing with for the past year?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just the not knowing, like I've always been someone that's kind of lived paycheck to paycheck, but I was able to like pull off living paycheck to paycheck, and it wasn't the end of the world. But now it's like, you just don't know. And that is so stressful and so panic inducing. Like, I'm okay with working. I like my job. Like, I've been going to college full time. I like going to college, but the unknown is so overwhelming that like my function level has been a lot lower because I'm just so stressed out. Like what do I do? How do I approach it? Like, it seems like almost every decision that I've made for 2020 has like been the wrong decision, or the decision that made things harder in the long run than easier. And I'm ready to
like that's based on misinformation that people have given you, not just, people are making the wrong decisions.
Well, there's that. And then I did get a part-time job after the first lockdown, but then getting the part-time job made myself ineligible for unemployment because I was making too much money. But also I felt like I needed to get a new, I know there's some fancy term for it, but like how they figure out how much money you're supposed to get every week, like it didn't include the contract work that I did. So without being able to talk to somebody to get it reevaluated, they were only giving me $118 a week. Like, so therefore working any part-time job, you're going to make more than $118 a week. And it just like, I'm like, well, I just literally shot myself in the foot by getting a part-time job. But when they were giving me the runaround with unemployment, like I needed money to eat and to just continue to survive. And with unemployment being so up in the air and so mishandled, like it was like, well, I'll do this. And I don't know. And right now, like, while it's easy to be like, oh yeah, we're going to open back up on the 21st or whatever for restaurants. But with the way the numbers are going up, I think it would be naive to think that we're going to actually reopen up on that date.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Soda. And Catherine, I want to give you the same space as far as anything else you would like to add around this situation and, just the struggles that you've been dealing with throughout this and how the government could be helping you more. Catherine, did you have anything else you would like to add?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And Catherine and Soda, I really appreciate your time and your bravery in just speaking your truth and telling us about what is happening around Kentucky. So lastly, we would love to hear from Ada, if you are able to unmute yourself and just, share with us a little bit about, how this has affected you and your family and anything else you would like to add.
Sure. Hi, everyone. As you mentioned, my name is Ada, and my story is a little different. So I have called Kentucky home for over 20 years, along with my parents and my siblings. However, we were undocumented. I now have DACA, my parents are still undocumented. And so, as you may know, or you may not know, that undocumented immigrants do not receive any kind of federal aid. So this COVID time, this pandemic time, has been especially difficult for my family. So I'm the oldest of four. So I have three younger siblings. And at the beginning of the pandemic, my father, he's the main breadwinner of the house, of the family, he lost his job. The company had to shut down. So he couldn't file for unemployment because he is not eligible for it because he doesn't have a social security number. So that was really tough for us. And I am considered an essential employee, so I have been blessed enough to still be able to work. However, as you know, when you are showing up to work and having to travel, commute, so you do, increase your risk of getting infected. My mom, she stays at home as much as she can because she's immunocompromised. So if she were to get sick, she doesn't have health insurance and she wouldn't be eligible for any kind of federal aid for that. So we try to take care of her a lot. And my three younger siblings, one is in college, the other one is in high school, and my little brother is in elementary school. Now my dad was able to find a job, but it did take him a while. And so we did kind of struggle. At the beginning of the pandemic, I totaled my car. So I did get the stimulus check, but I had to use that to help pay for a down payment for a new car. And because of my insurance, I still owed money on the car that I had totaled. I actually just finished paying it off yesterday. So I had to pay since February a monthly charge for a car that I didn't even own. So that was tough on us. My hours did get reduced, even though I am essential. So I wasn't working as many hours as I was in the beginning. However, up until this point, none of us have been infected with the virus. So we have that going for us. But I mean, money wise, I just received the 1,200 stimulus. My parents are not eligible for anything. My siblings, since they are citizens, we did get the extended SNAP because they received free lunch at school. So I don't know where we would have been if we would not have gotten that, because it was a huge, huge help for my family. So we are thankful for that. But if we really do want to help as many people as possible, we can't ignore the millions of undocumented immigrants that are living in the US, working, paying taxes. Yes, we do pay taxes. And even though I pay taxes, I do not receive that back. I will not. Even though I have a temporary residency with DACA right now, I still don't, I wouldn't receive it back. So, and we're not the only family that's going through that. I know several families who had been infected and they don't have health insurance. So it's kind of a scary time right now. And being undocumented, not being able to visit our home country ever. My family has been in Mexico. I only have my immediate family here. So it is already traumatizing enough to be an undocumented immigrant and to know that you can be detained and deported for just driving to the grocery store or to work is something that you have to live with. And it's an uncertainty that we have dealt with in this country for over 20 years. And even if we wanted to file for citizenship, we can't. There's no law that allows us to. So that's kind of a little bit of my and my family's story. I still live with my parents and I try to help out with as much as I can, but it's been really tough and we haven't really received much help because we're not eligible.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I know that I speak for everyone else on the call and saying we're so thankful for your family's health, that, in the midst of all of this, you've been able to stay healthy. And so that is something to celebrate. So thank you so much for sharing with us. It is so important that our next aid package be inclusive and really include everyone that is in this country. So I am so thankful for you bringing up your family and what you all are struggling with and dealing with. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this conversation as a whole before we kind of open it up?
Yeah, just that it like we have heard all the stories before mine and how everyone has a very specific and different situation. We all have very different needs, but we are a community, we are a country, and if we really want the whole country to thrive and to be better, then we need to help everyone, not just a select few. And under very special circumstances, we need to be mindful that everyone does have very specific and different situations, and we need to do the best we can as a community, as a country, as a government to really come together and make sure that we have everyone in mind, not just the select few that have been blessed to receive help, that there are so many more of us. And essentially, if we help one, we help all. And that's something that sometimes I think we forget.
Thank you so much. That's exactly what I think we need to hear to end out this call. And I am so appreciative of you and everyone else that is here. I do want to open it up now. If there are, I think we do have a couple of media outlets on the call. You can put questions in the chat bar, but you can also come off of mute if you would like to ask your question out loud. And I do believe we have at least one person who is on Facebook right now kind of monitoring for us to see if there are any Facebook Live questions that we could talk about on this call. So we will leave it open for a few moments for anyone who would like to ask any questions. And we'll stare silently at one another until that happens. And I also don't want to take up too much of anybody else's time. So we will wait exactly 2 minutes to see if we have any questions from our reporter friends or anybody else that is on Facebook Live or on the call. And I think that Ada and Valerie, your names are at least on there. I got I'm just checking on spellings, but I think we've got those covered. So thank you guys so much for being with us. Let's see, we do have one question. What do you think of the Republican proposal, and what would need to be added to make it worth passing? That is from Bruce Maples. So Dustin, Anna, Adrian, and or Ada, anybody else that's on the call, Catherine, Soda, anybody that has opinions or thoughts on the Republicans' proposal that they have just put out that we mentioned earlier in this call, what could be added to make it worth passing?
I'll just briefly speak to it. I mean, it is, as they have described it, a stopgap bill or a bridge plan into January, basically to hold over until there's a new administration, potentially a new Senate. Well, a new Senate either way, because there'll be 2 new senators from Georgia. So, you know, I think the bones of a good plan are all there. I think that they have the components of what needs to be a part of a general plan. The glaring omission being the stimulus checks. What is problematic with the bipartisan, I guess what you're referring to is the bipartisan plan, not Senator McConnell's plan, Bruce, because that's what I'm speaking to. Senator McConnell's plan is problematic on many levels, but yeah, okay. So, you know, the bones are there. I think last I heard, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have said that, you know, this is the starting point for a conversation. It's $908 billion. It's a lot less than any other proposal, any other meaningful proposal that has been put forward so far. I mean, the HEROES Act was $3.3 trillion. The HEROES 2.0 was $2.2 trillion. The sort of temporary agreement between Secretary Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi was $1.7 trillion. And, you know, now we're left with $908 billion that is really only meant for a couple months worth of aid. So it's a starting point, but I think, you know, ultimately we're going to need a lot more in order to get through this. I just saw some analysis from Moody's that said a $1.7 trillion stimulus would be enough just to keep a flat line on our job situation. And ideally what we really want is a robust recovery. So I'll stop there. Adrian, it looked like you had some comments you want to make as well.
I wanted to clarify which proposal we were talking about, and that happened.
Yeah.
So I would say it, as a stopgap measure to get us through the lame duck and the beginning of 2021, yeah, it's an okay proposal. The proposal that was released yesterday, whenever this week by the Republican majority in the Senate, has nothing for housing and homelessness or much of anything in terms of direct aid. So that would be my comment on that.
We have a question from Daniel. You've mentioned the need for federal relief. Are there any specific policies you'd like to see at the state level in order to hold people over until a larger federal relief package is available? And I think we have, discussed how whatever comes right now during this lame duck period is really a down payment. It's really something to help us get along, and we expect more in the future. But anybody else on the call, as far as what can our state do to help hold people over as we wait for additional relief from the federal side?
I mean,
and if you don't want to answer, we don't have to.
Well, I'll just briefly speak to this because it's something we've written on before, and I'll just speak for KY policy. We have a significant amount of money from the CARES Act that has yet to be spent, and the governor has said that he plans on putting a lot of that toward the loan that we've had to take out to continue paying unemployment insurance benefits. We think that the use of the money to pay off the loan or pay off part of the loan is really unnecessary, because the type of increase that businesses will be facing is pretty small and gradual. And the last time we paid it off pretty quickly. So we would like to see that money spent toward things like rent and utility relief, much more than what has been done already, which was good, but inadequate ultimately to meet the need that we have. And I think Adrian already mentioned a figure of close to $200 to $300 million in unpaid rent moving into January. We think that money could be used to supplement cash payments through unemployment benefits or through KTAP. There are real needs in school districts right now for additional funding. So there are a lot of opportunities for that money beyond putting a chunk toward our unemployment insurance loan. Adrian, I'll let you add to that if you'd like.
I would agree with that. As I mentioned, the Healthy at Home Eviction Relief Fund was very helpful because it was broad-based, flexible rental assistance devoted from the state's coronavirus relief fund. So it didn't come with all the requirements and red tape that typical federal programs do. And so, and it's been expended. And so to me, one way to make sure that we are providing relief to folks is to put some more money into there. As far as the utility relief fund, it looks like that, according to the governor's office, there's still some room there. There's still about $11 million in there. So we're watching that carefully because we know a lot of people owe a lot of money with back utilities, and we want to make sure that that's used and used well. As far as other state proposals that also get to Adam's question about the eviction front to avoid catastrophe in January, we're working on a couple of different angles. One is at the federal level, working to try to get the CDC to extend their eviction moratorium nationwide. It also needs to be expanded though, because there were a lot of loopholes that left a lot of people vulnerable and homeless because of it. There's nothing precluding the state from taking action and extending the moratorium. There's nothing, the CDC doesn't prevent states from taking better action. And in some cases in Louisville and Lexington, there's a movement to get Mayors Gorton and Mayor Fisher to enact local moratoriums. We obviously are worried about people in 120 counties and honestly, people across the United States. The most effective way to get this done is at the federal level, across state lines.
Thank you so much, Adrian. It's always good to remember just that this is a national catastrophe that everyone is dealing with. And so the easiest way for us to actually meet needs is federally and to get relief straight from our federal government.
The other, if I can follow up on that, you know, we are very cognizant that an eviction moratorium is only 1/2 or even 1/3 of the solution. There has to be money to keep people housed. The money has to keep flowing. And I am very worried about some of our small landlords who cannot, if you own a couple of properties, the profit margin is not there. And so it's not that we are taking a look at this, you know, from, I guess, both an individual perspective, because people, when they get evicted, they are losing their home. And then we're also taking a broader look at the housing market in general. Catherine really spoke to the fact that there isn't enough affordable housing to begin with, even before the pandemic. And so if we end up losing a bunch of rental housing because landlords haven't gotten paid, the consequences of this will be so devastating for so long. And it's a very simple solution. Definitely rent relief, eviction moratorium, and then folks have to know and have access to their rights in court, of course. Thank you for letting me follow up.
Thank you.
And I'll just jump in very briefly and say, you know, there are some ways that state government can step up and help, and they have done that. But ultimately, as members of the General Assembly will remind you, the state can't print money, only the federal government can do that. So any kind of sustained, robust assistance that we're gonna see has to come from the federal level, and it's badly needed. And I think that we have a small window of opportunity with the continuing resolution expiring next week to be able to push for that. And that's largely why we're here advocating today.
Thank you so much, Dustin. So we are 10 minutes till 3 o'clock. So I want to leave it a little bit of space here for any last minute questions. And also, if any of our guests would like to say anything else, Catherine or Valerie, Soda, I think we may have lost Ada, but if you all would like to have any additional comments, we would love to hear that now.
I don't really think so at this time. I mean, I'm just hoping something gets approved,
Right.
and something increases in a good way. Because if not, there's going to be a lot more people around here in a situation like mine. And I don't want to see that for nobody.
Right. Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I was trying to add, it's even though I share my story as well, you know, sorry, my guy's up. It's hard to listen to other people's stories, and then there are so many other people, and I think one challenge that I have is just that the stakeholders and the policymakers, I feel like a lot of times they're out of touch with what's really happening and how their policies really do affect people. I hope you all can hear me, sorry. And you know, I wish that they would listen to these stories and just really consider people and not, you know, have these blanket perceptions of what's happening or how their policies are affecting people, because, you know, we have several people here telling stories, and it's difficult. And, you know, people need to know this. They need to know this when they're making decisions and not, you know, just be so far out of touch with what's happening on the ground with people, especially if they're not personally affected, because I assume, you know, the government people also have their jobs and they don't have to call the unemployment phone number. They don't have to use a food stamp card. They don't know when they make these changes, or they think, oh, it's a little bit of it. It's just a little bit. It's not a big deal. You know, a little bit is a lot when you have a tight budget, when you have children, when the holidays are coming up. Any increase small is big. Yeah, I appreciate hearing the stories, and I'm sharing my story too. So, you know, but I feel for everyone. And even what Ada was saying, it's really important to consider everyone. We all live here. So.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time, and I appreciate your little one being here with us, because that is the truth for so many of us. You know, if you have children, they're in your life right now all the time. So thank you for sharing with us, and for sharing your cute little guy there with us too. So anyone else would like to have a final word before we close this out?
So I just wanted to back up what she said, that we're a nation of workers. We're a nation of people, and like we're not rich, we're not well-to-do, but we're gonna sit here. We still want to live our American dream and live our best lives. And of course, none of us want COVID to go any more out of control than it is. We don't want to, you know, I don't want to endanger anyone by continuing to work or continuing to have a restaurant open, but like I feel like the half and half, like, okay, restaurants are closed, but retails are open. Like, because we're doing it in small pieces, we're like, oh, but we can just forget about those little people. I really feel in some ways that it kind of needs to be like a all or nothing, because if we just eliminate some people from being able to work, I feel like people think it's not as pertinent to get it done. So like, oh, well, it's just a small percentage. It's not everyone. Or to protect, like if we all went back to work, then we wouldn't be protecting the vulnerable, the people that couldn't go back to work because of other reasons. And I just, going back, like, you know, if we could turn back time, I feel like, you know, we started a federal pandemic group years ago. And really at that front, it should have started, what do our unemployment systems need to look like in case this happens? What do our food systems need to look like in case this pandemic happens? And I think as a whole, like, granted, I've never been a part of those decision-making practices, but we're freaking America, and we got a bunch of smart people up top, but they just went like, oh, never mind, it's not a problem yet, so let's just not deal with it. Like, being the world power that we are, we should have known better, and we should have done better. And thinking about that now, we need to move forward. We need to quit using these poorly antiquated systems just because it doesn't help. You know, most of these problems don't affect the rich and the well-to-do or the powerful. But we're not a nation of just the rich and the powerful. We're the nation of everyone.
I feel like that ends it all for us. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that, Soda. That's such a beautiful way for us to end. I do want to make a quick look around, but I think last chance, if there are any questions for our panelists or our group here. Okay, I don't see any more questions in the chat. I am incredibly thankful and honored by everyone who is able to join us today and share your stories. I could not have asked for more, and I am so appreciative of just how brave that you are to step out and courageous to step out and talk about what's happening for you. And I thank you all for just bringing this back to people and individuals and not just numbers and big data. So thank you guys so much for being with us. I'm sure that we will probably do this again in a couple of months, but for now we're thankful for everyone, and just want to say for one last time that we need robust federal fiscal relief now, and that our Senate Majority Leader could be doing something about it, and that we have just spent a lot of time speaking with people who need relief now. So thank you all so much, and we will see you again later.